to show up in town almost every day. This is Santa Inez's first rock band, bristling with equipment they ordered from the north. And this is their first public concert. Television is speeding the changes in the world enormously. The more you know, the more you want. More goods, more services, more rights. It's closing the age-old gap between city and village in information. It lets everybody in on the political discussion, even if they can't read and write. That means the world is suddenly 100% literate in political terms. Which also means that it's only a generation or so away from being 100% democratic. This worried the Mexican government so much that it started giving villages free satellite dishes, dishes that conveniently brought in only Mexican channels.
24 horas.
The ruling party, PRI, tried to control what people saw. It gave the country's leading network, Televisa, a virtual monopoly on TV in return for a small favor. The nightly news covered the President of Mexico's day in stunning detail. And there was little sign of opposition leaders, just more of the president, until reality finally broke through. In early 1994, Zapatista rebels seized 3 towns in Chiapas state, demanding more democracy. The Mexican army easily drove the rebels back, but it couldn't stop the world's press from broadcasting their demands. So the Mexican media had to do the same. 2 months later, Luis Donaldo Colosio, President Salinas' hand-picked successor, was the unfortunate victim of another TV drama. In the weeks of confusion that followed, Mexicans suspected everybody of the assassination, even their own leaders. The government's credibility was sinking fast, and it had to regain public trust. So President Salinas had to open up the election campaign far more than he had planned. Colosio's funeral proved to be the death of state-controlled media in Mexico. The opposition parties started getting some TV coverage. Not equal time, of course. But the changes were a lot like the early days of glasnost in the old Soviet Union.
And the point is, there is no Soviet Union anymore. We spent most of the 20th century scared that totalitarian control over the mass media was a formula for perpetual dictatorship, that the rest of human history, in George Orwell's words, would be a boot stamping on a human face forever. The wonderful surprise at the end of the century is George Orwell was wrong. I'm not saying that this satellite dish is a magic liberator all by itself, but it's one of a whole range of communications technologies, from phones to photocopiers to faxes, that are making it harder and harder to lie to all of the people all of the time.
The walls are tumbling down for the first time in 20 years.
That's what doomed the communist regimes of Europe. Information destroyed them. Almost all the Latin American dictatorships are gone too, and most of the African and Asian one-party states, all victims of the global communications revolution.
A huge group of chanting, dancing youth coming towards me now. They're just moving.
That was David O'Sullivan outside the Mandela household in Soweto.
And Mexico? It will probably just slide into democracy without even a real revolution. What happens then? This is Matamoros, a small industrial town just across the Rio Grande River from Brownsville, Texas. It's the border between the Third World and the First World, and a good place to see what happens when the Third World starts to catch up. Crossing the border here to shop in the First World is easy, but working there is more complicated. This young man swims to work in a U.S. supermarket every day, and nobody really tries to stop him. The new strategy for keeping Mexicans at home is to send the work across the border. Most people in Matamoros work in American and Canadian plants. They're the infamous maquiladoras, duty-free plants that assemble components for export back to North America. Maquiladoras are routinely accused of using cheap labor, polluting the environment, and exploiting women. But there's more to the sweatshop floor than meets the eye. This woman is one of several 100,000 Mexicans working in factories along the border, and North American workers are right to worry for their jobs. Mexican women work fast and well for 1/6 of their hourly rate. But even that modest wage is transforming the lives of a lot of people in Matamoros. Many women are so pleased by their new prosperity that they dress for work as though they were going to a party. Workers here make twice the average industrial wage in Mexico, and wild horses couldn't drag them back to their villages.
Porque en mi casa somos pobres y a mi papá les ayudaba en labores del hogar y pues no ganaba nada, o sea, yo vivía con mis papás y ahora siento una satisfacción, o sea, un gusto de pues ganar mi sueldo, tener mi dinero, tener mis cosas, pues me siento feliz.
Matamoros is still in the Third World. Slums like this are awful places. No electricity, no plumbing, and one tap per so-called street. This is actually a squatter camp built on a garbage dump 2 years ago by people seeking jobs in maquiladoras. But even this is an improvement on the misery they left behind in their villages, and as soon as people here get a real job in a maquiladora, they move into much better neighborhoods. It's ugly to look at, but this is what development looks like. Graciela de la Rosa once lived in a slum like this just down the road. She came here 20 years ago from a small village and found work in a maquiladora. She raised 6 children and saved all her money.
Cuando regreso a estos lugares siento nostalgia, depresión, ¿verdad? Porque en aquel entonces pues éramos bien pobres y yo pensaba que nunca íbamos a salir de esta situación, ¿verdad? Pero gracias a Dios que nos ha dado la oportunidad de salir adelante, aún viviendo en un lugar así. Gracias a Dios logré sacar a mis hijos de donde estábamos y a una vida mejor, a una casita más grande y con más comodidades. Tenía piso de madera y había luz eléctrica y, o sea, todo.
Fíjate los mosquitos.
Graciela's home is hardly a palace, but it has a fridge, a stove, a washing machine, a phone, and enough gadgets to make her children's lives more comfortable and healthier than most families in Mexico.
los colores de la naturaleza. Aquaciel, el esmalte ecológico. Naturalmente, es de cómics.
Graciella's children and grandchildren live in the third world, but their heads are already in the first world. In northern Mexico, the satellite dishes get American stations direct, and people know almost as much about our world as we do.
Uh-oh. Well, how about American Express traveler's checks for two?
And not just about our lifestyle. They know about our wages, our rights, and our freedoms.
Protesters who want to kill the energy or BTUs entirely.
The free trade here is not just in goods, it's in ideas. And that's a large part of why Matamoros is one of the only Mexican cities where a 40-hour week is normal. Sociologist Alma Yolanda says that the company started hiring mostly women because they were a cheap and passive labor force. But Mexico's old patriarchal system started to crack once they got out of their houses and went to work in modern factories.
Women have tend to look for better education after Maquiladora has come. They don't want to be in the line of production. They want to be supervisors. They want to learn the language. They want to communicate. There's a lot that has come with the Maquiladora, not only the job. There's a change in their lives, in the way they dress, and the things they have access to. They are within a union. They're being able to participate in elections not only as voters, but they have something to say. They're able to campaign. They never had that opportunity before. So it's an opening for us. All these other things that Maquiladora has brought together is opening eyes and is opening doors for Mexicans to consider a very different future, and also a different future politically.
That future came much closer in the recent election. PRI, the party that's ruled Mexico for 70 years, won again. But President Ernesto Zedillo, unlike his predecessors, had to do it honestly. He even took part in the country's first television debate with other candidates. The new government has promised to share some power with the second-place PAN party, and another one-party state is falling apart before our eyes. But getting rid of the dictatorships may be the easy part of the democratic revolution. Once third world people get freedom and equality in their own countries, they will demand an equal share of the world's wealth. And most of that is in the hands of the rich northern countries. Will the first world accept equality for people they see as foreigners? If not, we will all be the losers. The enterprise of civilization has succeeded far beyond the dreams of our ancestors, but now we are threatened by our own success. So many people, so many cars, so much development, consumption, pollution. It's been a great ride, but now it's time to grow up.
Durante todo el día no estamos llegando a los 150 puntos, estamos en 134 en el suroeste, perdón.
Luis Manuel Guerra is trying to get his country to develop more sensibly, to skip the juvenile stage of overconsumption that the West pioneered. But so long as people in the first world are still consuming so much and Mexicans are consuming so little, Guerra doesn't have a prayer.
Of course, we have extreme poverty. 20% of our people just survive from one day to the next. And we need development. We need jobs. We need security. We need housing. We need hospitals. We need schools. You cannot promise the people to go back to their villages where they didn't have enough, where they were struggling just to survive, where they were prone to disease, where they were prone to ignorance and to simple devastation of their surroundings because they didn't have any alternative but to devastate.
Sí, habla Manuel Guerra, listo con el reporte.
When you have joblessness, when you have people who just are on the brink of survival, you cannot talk with them.